Welcome back to Your Health radio and television program. I'm Dr. Lisa Hernandez and I'm your host today. We've been talking about traffic safety. We've learned a lot about bicycling and car seats. Our next guest is Susan Kent, and she is the Traffic and Injury Prevention Coordinator for the County of Monterey's Health Department. And she's actually been busier than normal this week because of the outreach and education programs during the Traffic Safety Month. And I want to thank Susan for taking time off. Maybe you could take a breath. Yeah, there you go. And talk to us a little bit about what you do in Monterey County for the Health Department.
All right, as you said, I'm the Monterey County Traffic Safety and Injury Prevention Coordinator. And I have a couple of different hats that I wear. One of them is the coordinator for the Monterey County Traffic Safety Collaborative. Now, the collaborative is a group of people comprised of traffic safety engineers, public works people, health educators, teachers, police law enforcement officers, including local PD and CHP, and different people coming in from the community and different organizations such as Sunstreet Centers who are interested in alcohol and DUI prevention. And we get together quarterly and discuss some of the problems in the county, and also we share resources and information, and we talk about some of the things that we can work on together. So for instance, one of the things that we talked about was distracted driving. And it's way beyond just doing cell phones. I mean, everybody knows cell phones is a problem, and then texting. There have been some horrendous accidents that have happened because one guy was texting and drunk at the same time. There have been a lot of accidents because of alcohol, but the combination of alcohol and being on the cell phone is really deadly. But distracted driving also covers things like putting on makeup when driving, working a GPS while driving, eating and drinking coffee while driving. There are actually people who tried to read the newspaper while driving. And so what we did is we got together as a collaborative and we wrote a letter to Anna Caballero and Bill Moning and said, look, we want you to work to increase the fines and the breadth of the distracted driving law, to do more than just cell phone, but to include all forms of distracted driving, and to really increase the fines so that it has some more teeth to it. And recently, in fact, the fines for cell phone use and texting have been increased, and this distracted driving has been added on to other components of distracted driving as well. So I'm the coordinator for that, and then in addition, I coordinate a Safe Routes to School grant for Soledad and King City.
That's why I never see you in your chair. Well, you're right. You bring up some good points about distracted driving. You know, on my way to work, I think I saw all of those things. Maybe not the drunk driving. I hope not at 7 o'clock in the morning, but you never know. Mm-hmm. But you're right. It truly does impact how people make decisions on the road, especially when they have got 3 or 4 things in their hand and in their mind. Mm-hmm. So I had a question about what are some of the traffic problems that we see in Monterey County and how we compare to other cities close by or other counties in the state?
Unfortunately, Salinas as a whole does not compare very well. We have a very high pedestrian and bike problem comparative to populations of the same amount statewide. I forget the exact numbers, but Salinas is probably like maybe 10th out of 53 different other towns. And Monterey is high for injuries for pedestrians over 65, mainly because of the tourism there, but there's a high rate there of pedestrians over 65 being struck, even in the crosswalks. And part of that may be impatience with seniors crossing the street, and also because of the traffic congestion around the tourist areas in Monterey. but the county as a whole is pretty average, but there are spots such as Greenfield, Soledad, and King City that stand out as having higher pedestrian and bike injuries when compared to towns of the same size. So those are areas that we key towards trying to do preventive and more education. And one of my jobs is actually to look at the statewide statistics and to keep track of that and to see who's doing well and who needs work.
Well, it sounds like you kind of have an idea of what might be happening to pedestrians on the peninsula with the elderly. What are some other reasons why pedestrians get injured? You think walking is safe, but it sounds like there are some challenges there for keeping people safe when they're walking across the street or walking to work or school.
Right. There are a couple of issues. One, there's actually a problem with drunk pedestrians coming out of bars, and they weave across the street and don't cross at a corner or a stop walk or a crosswalk. They get hit, particularly late at night, so that's a problem. There's also problems with immigrants coming in and not knowing the laws. Maybe where they came from, it was okay to cross mid-block and they can just walk out and people will stop for them. And here, that's not quite true. If you walk out in the middle of the traffic and the traffic is coming through rapidly, even if you're at a corner, you're supposed to judge whether that car is really coming too quickly. And yes, the car is supposed to stop for you, but it really is a shared responsibility. The pedestrian really needs to be aware and to look both ways, left, right, left again, and back to make sure that they are clear. Sometimes drivers do not see them. So similar to what Kaki said, pedestrians should wear bright clothing, particularly at night, reflective clothing. They should always cross at corners and also cross in crosswalks and cross at traffic signals. Crossing at mid-block, a lot of people assume that, okay, if I step out and it's clear to go, I'm going to be okay. But what happens is that there are cars that they may not see, and then there are cars that can come around the corner or come from a driveway that they had no idea was coming, and they're struck, and so it often ends up in injury and injuries that could be prevented. That's the key, is that we need a lot of education and awareness so that we prevent injuries that really didn't need to happen.
Well, it's nice to hear you say that it's a shared responsibility, because I often put faith in the fact that people can see me when I'm crossing the street, but I get nervous because I'm not always secure that they're really going to stop. So I think it's a really good point for both pedestrians and motorists to hear today that it's a shared responsibility for safely driving or walking. So I just want to switch gears quickly to about what your thoughts are on what might happen if school bus availability gets minimized due to budget cuts. What might that impact be on safety for pedestrians, in particular to children?
Well, this is already an issue in some towns because bus service has been cut for many of the schools due to financial problems. So what happens is that you'd think, well, okay, the kids close to school will either walk or ride a bike. And well, what happens is that the parents or an adult ends up driving them, and so the congestion and traffic around the school becomes a true nightmare. Now, it would be okay if the parents said, oh, I'm going to leave 15 minutes early so I can get to the school on time and drop my kid off and not worry about the traffic, but everybody tends to run a little late, and so the parents jump in a car, everybody wants to get to school on time, the parents may be hurrying to work, and they end up double and triple parking in front of the school. The traffic is slowed down even more. Kids get out in between cars and run the danger of being struck. I've been visiting schools throughout the year and taking pictures, and I have some astounding pictures of parents standing out in the middle of the street, triple parked, and kids running between cars or cars just about to pull out and almost ready to hit a kid because they're small, and some parents can't see the small kids who run between the cars. Or there's another problem where parents will illegally park and then walk across the middle of the street with their kid, but they're jaywalking and they're slowing down traffic even more and endangering themselves. In addition to the pedestrian and the congestion, what people don't know is they're really affecting the environment, because more cars carries more air pollution, and then they're all waiting in line, so they have more outgassing and more exhaust, and they're creating more air pollution and as well as congestion. So it becomes a real problem that is actually solvable if parents can do several things. They can park a little further away from the school within a block where there's easy parking and walk their kids to school, just a little block, or they can encourage their kids to walk to school as a group or with a parent, or use what's called a bike train where kids bike together wearing their helmets and bike with an adult or a teenager that knows the traffic safety rules.
Are there any other solutions for drop-off and pickup if you do have to take your kid to school and you're in that line with everyone else? Is there certain common courtesy tips that you can give?
Well, basically is to, first of all, wait for kids to cross through the crosswalk. They're usually crossing, and as the traffic congests, some of the parents are in a hurry, and so they literally try to eject their kids and then force their way through the traffic at the crosswalk. So it's basically, one, be safe, watch out for the pedestrians and the bicyclists, leave enough time, and two, take your turn. I mean, there's some days, for instance, when it's really, really rainy weather, we have that, and that you're just going to have to leave more time and realize you're going to have to be patient, but you need to be extra vigilant in looking for the kids and making sure that not only is your child being safe, getting out in the right place, but the other kids walking across the street are safe as well, and that you're taking precautions on every way to make sure that everyone is crossing safely and is assured of being fine.
And what about kids that are walking to school? What are things that the kids should know? What should the parents do to ensure that their children get to school safety?
The parents should either walk with the kids to school or make sure an adult or an older child is walking with them. But a really great thing to do is to walk the route together and to point out, well, okay, there's a dog in this yard, and make sure that he's on a chain, and maybe walk a little further away. There's no crosswalk at this. You have to look both ways and be really careful of the traffic. And really picking a safe route to school, saying, well, there's no sidewalk in this area, maybe you want to go half a block away, not to cut through areas that have alleyways or garbage cans that may not be safe. There's some bridges that kids should not walk under by themselves because they're known areas where there's a lot of crime. And just mapping out a safe route to school with your kid and looking at the dangers and the things that the child needs to do, as well as teaching them the correct way to cross the street, basically looking left, looking right, looking left again, and making eye contact with the traffic to make sure that the driver sees you.
I know you mentioned about the Safe Roads to School and that we had gotten a grant for that. Can you tell me a little bit about what that program is?
Safe Routes to School is actually started in Europe, and what they found in Europe is that there was a decrease in the population that was walking and biking to school. So they started looking at reasons behind that, and some of them were what's called infrastructure, which is basically the roads weren't safe, there needed to be crosswalks, there needed to be pedestrian bridges, there needed to be more better traffic signals, countdown traffic signals. Here in the United States, in 1969, nearly 45% of the kids walked or biked to school. Now, 40 years later, or not quite 40 years later, only about 15 or 16% of the kids walk to school. So Safe Routes to School has been implemented federally so that we can work on two areas. One, education of the students and the parents and the community members for safety, which is called a non-infrastructure grant, and working on infrastructure, which is looking at improving the roads, putting in bicycle lanes, improving the crosswalks, putting up stoplights and stop signs where we need it, just looking at areas that have high pedestrian traffic and trying to improve it. So for example, one of the things that the county had was at Gavilan View School in Salinas, and they put up a traffic light there because it's a main thoroughfare and the kids were having to cross there without a traffic light. Now there's a traffic light there to control the traffic, and the kids are much safer going across the crosswalk.
Wow. Now I know why you're not at your seat. Well, thank you very much, Susan. We've learned a lot about traffic safety, whether you're walking or in a car or riding a bicycle. And I want to thank all our guests today for giving us a little bit of information to keep ourselves healthy. I want to remind you again that next month we will be talking about summer sun safety, and you can email your questions to us so we can address them on the show like we did today via email at mchd2010@gmail.com. My name is Dr. Lisa Hernandez, and thank you for joining us on your Health TV and radio program.